So today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, MK Ultra. And with that, what do you guys know about MK Ultra?
I know that MK Ultra exists. I know a bit more than that, but this one isn't really a conspiracy because it's obviously everybody knows this happened. There's documentation that it happened. CIA admits that it happened.
Right.
So it's not necessarily a conspiracy in and of itself because there's nobody denying that this actually happened. So what's more conspiratorial about it is how far did it go and who did it affect? What did it do in the world?
Who was part of it?
Right. As we also know that a lot of documents were intentionally destroyed regarding the project.
Brad, what do you know?
We're seeing it happen all around us every day, right?
Will Smith?
We just saw Will Smith. Yeah, he's a classic MK Ultra case.
We're going there right away.
Jada Pinkett, his classic handler. So what was the one most recent was Kanye West when he, everybody says he went crazy. And then his celebrity trainer texted him threatening him, unless you apologize to my people, I'm going to have you incarcerated again. I'm going to dope you up. And playtime with the kids is never going to be the same, right? Mm-hmm. He threatens him. Mm-hmm. And it turns out this guy, Harley Pasternak, is actually, he's claimed to be a celebrity trainer, but he's actually works for the military, I think in Canada. And he does food and chemical experimentation on soldiers to see if they can, like, in one case, he admitted that he trained them to stay awake for 3 days, but still alert. So, okay. It's an odd thing for a celebrity trainer, odd background.
Seems not weird. Odd if you're a CIA operative.
Yeah. That's right.
If you're a handler, it's perfect.
Yeah. So I did probably too much research last minute, but that's okay. That's how we got here, right? For sure, I already knew about like the experiments. They happened in the 50s and the 60s. There's a lot of like connections to the drug, to the like
acid culture,
LSD culture.
Yeah, exactly. Which is kind of hilarious because in an attempt to brainwash and control people, the CIA accidentally created people who were against them, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, ended up opening people's minds instead of closing them.
They did the wrong thing. I think one of my favorite stories about MK Ultra is how LSD was found just because, you kind of got to start there since that was one of the main drugs. Do we all know the story of LSD being found? Yep. Dave, you definitely know. You guys know the story?
Let's tell it.
So there was a Swiss chemist named Albert Hofmann. He was doing some experiments and he accidentally synthesized LSD in his lab, but he didn't know what it was and he was not wearing gloves. And so for those of you who don't know, LSD can be absorbed through the skin. So this guy took who knows how big of a dose of LSD, and then his bike ride home was something. He describes thinking he was dying. The world was flipping over on itself for hours. He thought he was in hell. He said he watched the earth fold in half. I mean, it's crazy. His account
was that
53, I think. Yeah. Oh. No, 53 is Frank
50.
Olson.
That's right.
I think it was the late 40s.
40s, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So it was synthesized in like the late 40s. But it was known about before because that's what ergot that's what ergot is. So ergot will kill you in high doses. In low doses, it's basically LSD, which is like an old human tradition of ergot ceremonies, the whole thing. Anyways, so he synthesized it, got way too high, and then went, oh, there's something here. And so then everybody else,
this.
Yeah. But I can only imagine what that must have been like, having no idea what happened.
I know. I wonder how much got on him, man. That's quite a trip.
Bit.
So that's a crazy story. So if you want to just hear more about that story, Michael Pollan has the book This Is Your Mind on Plants, one of which he talks about like ergot and stuff, and then there's a Netflix series similar to it, and they have recordings of Albert Hofmann talking about that trip, and I think he's dead now, but he was like an old man talking about it, and it was, yeah, I would think so too. I think he died not that long ago.
I'm
though.
No scientist, but I believe that man is dead.
Yeah, but I mean, just hearing like old recordings of him talk about it it's almost hard not to like die laughing, because you just imagine this old man reminiscing to being a young guy on a bike, going, "Oh shit, what is happening right now?" I think that's hilarious. So those are like basics that I know.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's perfect in that sense, and just understanding MK Ultra's origins kind of lie in another, big thing that I want to talk about, but it's kind of like a segue, is Operation Paperclip. Just in terms of the Nazis wanting to mind control people, wanting to torture people, wanting to implement
lots of
thoughts
crazy
and stuff.
experiments.
Yep.
So-
sewing people's legs to their arm sockets and weird crap.
Experiments on twins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Dr. Mengele stuff.
Right.
Really dark stuff. So that's why, the Operation Paperclip and leading into MK Ultra and mind control is just a very where after World War II, the OSS turned into the CIA.
Which
And-
turned into, let's take all the Nazi scientists and keep doing what they were doing.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yep.
We're going to keep some, and then the USSR are going to keep some, but the US is like, no, we got the better Nazis,
Our Nazis are smarter than us.
which is insane, but not out of the realm of possibilities in terms of the what possibilities may lie in a lot of different fields. One of which is science and medical and controlling people or experimenting on people unbeknownst to them.
But it's all over the place too, because
Yeah.
it's like the development of the rocket engine,
Right.
spaceships,
Yeah.
or basically which would be rockets at the time.
Yeah, thanks, Nazis.
yeah.
Appreciate it. So really, the short list of good things Nazis did: nukes, LSD. Right? Is that kind of like what we're boiling this down
Rocket
to?
engines.
Rocket engines. Sorry, and rocket.
Nukes full of LSD.
Ooh, all right, LSD.
And the
next.
Volkswagen.
The Beetle.
At any rate, program began in 1953, correct?
Allegedly.
Allegedly began in 1953. A lot of the information that is known about MK Ultra is due to the fact that several thousand documents weren't destroyed in 1973.
Right.
By accident, they weren't destroyed because they were housed in a different area that the CIA doesn't normally house documents like this.
But also, too, this is kind of jumping ahead, but Jolly West, in terms of him actually leaving MK Ultra and then becoming the head psychiatrist or psychological professor at UCLA. And he had a lot of the documents that he worked on for MK Ultra.
They shouldn't even allow you to be a professor if your name's Jolly.
In his
Well, his name is not Jolly. That's a nickname.
Jolin West. But he had a lot of the records, a lot of the classified information with him in his own archives, and he actually left it in the UCLA archives, which you can actually go to UCLA and actually check out and read.
Interesting.
So you
I'm
can
surprised
actually
they,
go do- you
wouldn't
can
have
actually
gone
go
to
and do
destroy
that.
those.
Well, I'm sure they checked to make sure there wasn't anything too bad in it.
There's there's a lot of crazy stuff within that, but that's kind of jumping ahead. But in the sense of just the expansive way that they went about this is that Alan Dulles, the head of the CIA, sanctioned this
Yep.
and said,
Good old Alan Dulles.
you guys can do this, but it's off the books. It's a clandestine operation. So we don't know you and you don't know us kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
We
then
don't know how much money is getting spent on this.
Yeah.
We don't know.
just sell
Exactly what's happening.
shell corporations, clinics all over the United States.
And different names like MK Delta,
yeah.
which is the whole thing that Frank Olson was a part of in 1953.
What was the other one, like MK Search or something?
Yeah,
like
there's a
that?
few of them.
That's a Jewish rapper.
Yeah, so in 1953 too, Frank Olson, I'm sure you know this story, right?
Refresh my memory.
Frank Olson, he was a U.S. Army biochemist, and in November of 1953, he pulled a Russia. He fell out of a window from the 13th
Oh, that's
story.
right. Yep.
So he fell out of a window randomly, 1953. What's interesting about him is Frank Olson was allegedly part of a mass, purging, basically a mass killing of people, MK Delta, where they did a bunch of other experiments on people. It was ruled that his death was an accident. Hey, he fell out a window and it's our bad because we dosed him with LSD. So they awarded.
Wasn't it suicide? Didn't they say suicide?
They said suicide,
Okay.
but they said he killed himself and it's because
It's just a prank, bro.
yeah, something. Right. So
He's on Epstein's Island.
his family was awarded $750,000 in 1975, which is even more interesting because his family was awarded $750,000. The family later in the early 2000s tried to sue the federal government to get more information released, and it was ruled that you couldn't sue him because there was a prior settlement before.
Yeah.
So
we already paid you.
So it's,
Yeah.
it would be double jeopardy.
Yeah.
right, you can't. Right, which is even more interesting because now they're basically the government saying, "Well, we paid you your money. We're not going to open this back up. That's a loss." But it's very interesting that he was a U.S. biochemist and probably knew a lot of information, and he committed suicide.
Fell
out of a
wasn't
window.
quote,
That was
fell out of a
Worm-
window.
Was it Wormwood? Isn't that what that was? Netflix made a documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a crazy thing. Just how deep everything goes. I mean, you can even go even further, just in the sense of like the 1960s, in terms of like the music and everything during that time, and even link it to Laurel Canyon in the sense of all these different artists and everything at the same time were kind of making psychedelic music and the whole counterculture thing, but also you can look at the Doors, specifically Jim Morrison, in the sense of his father was an admiral in the Navy, so you can have all these different...
I thought he was in Army Psych Ops.
No.
That's what I thought it was.
No, Navy Admiral.
He was an admiral.
okay.
He was an admiral. So
And he
probably
was,
Office of Naval Intelligence.
Yeah,
Right.
Naval Intelligence.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
he was in.
ONI.
He was part of the Gulf of Tonkin incident.
Yeah.
Right.
So
No
there's all
doubt.
these weird connections when you start to like look at
Peel
those
little layers back.
and just start to put this guy on. You kind of start to question in terms of how much of again going ahead, but social engineering was going on at the time, not just in MK Ultra, just in individuals, but in like a larger.
Well, in a sense,
Larger
okay. So
footprint.
here's an even larger conspiracy. So a lot of that. At this time, you also have a lot of like track housing in this 1950s. Like I want what my neighbor has, and we all got the same car and the same house and the same looking wife, and the
Right.
we've all got the Cadillac as our dream car and all of that stuff. So that's almost social engineering in and of itself, just on a mass scale of like this is the life you're supposed to live. This is how you're supposed to feel.
The whole
This is
nuclear
who you're
family
supposed
thing.
to be. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think the other project you were thinking of is Operation Midnight Climax.
Yep.
That's the other one you were thinking of, I think. That's a
What's that?
So Operation Midnight Climax was sort of all part of this MK Ultra banner. Essentially, the CIA set up brothels, and they were dosing Johns, people that came in to pay prostitutes, to just experiment on them. They would dose them up with high levels of LSD. They also gave them some of the other drugs that were part of the experiments: mescaline, amphetamines, heroin, morphine, psilocybin, marijuana. So I'm not really sure that did much of anything except for just make
They
the
gave
dude
them
chill.
gave it all
Started-
to them at one time, probably.
Right, probably alcohol,
Started listening to
sodium.
jazz and
Well, they would be there for a long
Writing
time
funny
too.
poetry.
They'd
Right.
be there for like 2 or 3 days, and then they release them. And they who what are they going to tell? Who are they going
Right.
to tell? Who are they going to tell their family? They got locked up in a brothel for 3 days.
So
You know?
so this is starting to
Plausible
sound like
probability.
just I don't know, wacky Bill Murray scientist from Ghostbusters gone wrong or something like that. But was it successful? Like, what's a
Okay.
successful
Oh,
MK
so-
Ultra?
that's super interesting. I
So-
was thinking about that same thing
so-
too.
Jolly West. It's in the book that I gave you, which is Charles Manson, Chaos. Charles Manson and
The
Secret-
CIA
and the
and
Secret
something-
History
yeah,
of the
something like that.
60s. Really great book. Highly recommend it. But it's on record saying that the author and journalist, there's a letter that was sent from Jolly West to, I can't remember, it's been a while since I read the book, saying that I've done it. I've done mind control. I've completed the mission in that sense. And then from that point on, that's when John went to UCLA. So essentially the program was still kind of up and running and whatnot, but they were successful in doing it.
so that's the only reason he left. He's like, I finished.
Basically.
Back off to college.
Well, I mean, the
Back
thing
to my
is,
garden.
But no, here's back off. Okay,
Him
now
and Thanos are sitting
okay,
on the porch.
so then you can even take that further in the sense of like, okay, now I'm going to go off into a different type of social engineering. I'm going to go off and do a different kind of mind control. I'm going to go to universities. Because there was a lot of the counterculture movement was started in
There we go.
universities, and there's even still kind of going on now.
Oh yeah.
So, so there's still
I don't know
that.
that that's counterculture.
No, but it's still.
well, but
Yeah,
counterculture
it's
becomes
compliant
normal
culture
culture
now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
compliant culture, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so you can kind of see these threads and just kind of going off in a bunch of different ways and everything like that. But one of the interesting things that I want to tie this back into MK Ultra is back to our JFK discussion, which John West was the psychiatric evaluator for Jack Ruby. So,
Oh, interesting.
Well, and then
Yep.
also Oswald was on a base in Japan that was a CIA base, and obviously had many other connections to the CIA, but it's very possible he could have been part of.
so I highly recommend checking out the clip on YouTube of the author of the book that I'm recommending, Chaos. He's on Joe Rogan, and he's talking about Jolin West being the psychiatric, person to evaluate Jack Ruby while he's in custody. He goes in the room. Jack Ruby's completely fine before Jolin West even is in the picture.
Did he have a little black bag with him when he walked
Most
in?
likely, he probably
probably a
did.
suitcase,
He
yeah,
most
some
likely
sort.
did. As soon as he comes out, he's like, all right, he's not fit for trial. He's not fit for anything.
Mhm.
This man is insane. And Jack Ruby's just going out of his mind, So, I mean, there's something to that. To like, one could even postulate that Jack Ruby was MK Ultra in the sense of assassinating Oswald. Because
Yeah,
he's
very,
even
actually very true. Yeah,
he's
'cause
even
he's in it
saying-
earlier than
Right.
Yeah,
than just getting visited by some doctor afterwards.
He's even saying after he shot Oswald, what happened? What am I doing here? Because he's like, I know all these cops because he was mobbed, so he's connected. So of course he's gonna know the cops. So he's like, I know all you guys. What am I doing here? What's happening?
Well,
So
the cops are kind of just parading Oswald out to him as well, right?
Yeah,
And then yeah, it's very possible he was. I don't know. Maybe if it may not even be MK Ultra. It could just be that he was just in on that. But that's a pretty crazy move, to shoot somebody in public on television
Right.
yeah.
Well, and on that same sort
without
of
some kind of help.
on that same interesting list of people who were like MK Ultra or like mildly MK Ultra, Lawrence Teeter, who was the lawyer for Sirhan, also more than likely he claims he got dosed by the CIA.
Yeah.
Jesse Eisenberg in
And-
that movie.
RFK Jr. says that he does not think Sirhan did it.
No,
I mean, I don't think
That's-
anyone
right,
does.
that's a whole nother thing I would love to get into.
Yeah, that's a
for
good
another
one for-
episode. That's
yeah,
a really
exactly.
good
That's
episode.
interesting that it's also connected here.
Yeah.
Wow. No
So
doubt.
there's but some other possible nodal, possible alleged victims. Whitey Bulger. We all know Whitey Bulger, right? The Irish.
He was like a volunteer in prison.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he decided he got dosed every single week. Every single week, that dude got hit with like high doses of
I mean,
LSD.
he just liked it. Yeah.
He just was
He
like,
volunteered
yeah,
for the experiments.
I mean,
He was
what-
already doing
what
it
else
when he
you
was
gonna-
outside of jail.
What else are you
so-
gonna do?
right. Ted Kaczynski,
Oh,
Unabomber?
yes,
the Unabomber. Yep, he has connections to MK Ultra too, as having been experimented on, and everybody's favorite Charles Manson as well. Also, for sure.
So, how deep did you're still in the midst of kind of reading about the Charles Manson portion, but you've
Yeah.
read through that.
Yeah.
So, can you kind of give us what's the Charles Manson connection, and then basically like what were the repercussions? What basically did Charles Manson become what they wanted him to become, or did he branch off and become something other than what was intended?
That's the interesting thing about the book is it's a lot of digging and it's a lot of tearing up the official narrative of Helter Skelter, which isn't now I don't believe is actually true, and that's kind of the conclusion that the author and journalist came up with as well. There's no clear concrete answer because he was just trying to look for answers, and it was he would keep running into dead ends in a sense, but at least from what he gathered, and I agree with him as well, is that Charles Manson was just in a position to where he's kind of like the ideal candidate if you want to have somebody do things. He has a terrible childhood. He's in and out of juvenile hall a bunch. He actually goes to jail a bunch of times. He's in the right time frame for when the CIA was actually going to psychiatric places and even in jails and whatnot and prisons to experiment on these people because they're not fit for society, and who's going to believe them anyway?
Yeah,
So he's
perfect
just
candidate.
kind of a random pick.
Well, he's a perfect candidate. He has all the makings of
Right, but
somebody
it,
you'd
but
want
it
to
could have been
experiment
him. There
on.
could have been
It
100
could've-
other
sure.
people like him.
It could have been,
He's
absolutely. But
Just
I mean,
happened to be him.
it
Right.
just happened to be him. But at the same time, too, when he would, can't remember the time frame, but it fits in time with the counterculture movement, the hippie movement in San Francisco at the time. There was a health clinic not far from Haight-Ashbury where Manson would go and do his routine checkups because he's on parole or whatever. I can't remember exactly what it was, but this particular clinic was a shell for the CIA. And they had psychiatric evaluation people there. They had psychologists there and everything like that. And they would actually give Manson doses.
Change out medications and
Yeah, basically give him the things that he needed to give to his family, to give to his his
the Manson
people.
family,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
not his actual family.
No.
Yeah.
Well, they became his family.
Right.
But that's
Like, here, Mom.
But
I got you something.
I went to the store. But the interesting thing about that as well, about that clinic in particular, it was still open by the time that this book was released in 2019. As soon as the book came out and press got out, and it was out in the world and everything, that clinic shut down
Interesting.
almost instantaneously.
Even though allegedly the experiment stopped in the 60s. Right.
Yeah.
Super
so-
interesting.
Even though allegedly the LSD experiments,
The whole
Just
MK Ultra
MK
program
oh, the MK Ultra.
was over. So it's probably just reskinned, called something different, and
I mean, it's,
same old, same old.
it's pretty common for the little cutouts for the CIA to just all of a sudden just scuttle the ship as soon
Right.
as they're
Yeah.
hit light of day. So
But coming back to in terms of like Manson in general, his purpose really was to end the counterculture movement, to end the hippie movement, because you had the summer of love and everything like
Right.
that. As soon as the La Bianca tape murders happen in Hollywood and in Los Angeles, it's front page news. Look at these hippies. Look at this.
Look at how dangerous they
Look
are.
at how they are.
Right.
I mean, it's no different than. I mean, he also goes into Operation Chaos and Counterpol, which went against the Black Panthers and just African Americans and the civil rights movement and everything like that. So that's a whole nother thing as well.
Yeah, and I mean that was a big part of Nixon's presidency, was to smash the hippie movement, smash the counterculture movement,
Yeah.
get back to bring the silent majority back into power. And
Which is why it's so interesting that the same experiment produced people like Ted Kaczynski and Charles Manson, as well as Ken Kesey, Robert Hunter, and Allen Ginsberg. So Allen Ginsberg, outspoken against psychedelic use. Robert Hunter, Grateful Dead.
yeah, really shitty poet too.
Yeah. But
It's just
But
my
it-
opinion.
but it's funny. So that your question is, was it successful? It's almost like yes and no to the extremes. Yes, it was successful because in the case that like they showed how crazy, how bad the hippie movement is, for sure. But also they sort of amplified the hippie movement, right? So it's like, was it
That's what I
successful?
wonder.
I don't know.
So how much involvement was in with the Manson family and like pushing this, like, you need to commit acts of violence, you need to
Well, it was like kind of like one could see it as, all right, he's an operative, but he's also just like on a suicide mission.
like, does he know he's an operative, or is he just, or like
That's
I
the
mean,
question, right?
they're just kind of pushing
Manson
him in
didn't
certain
actually
directions, and that's the
perform
natural
any of the
result
murders,
of it?
though, right? I mean,
That's it. Yeah.
like,
Correct.
As
Technically,
far as we
technically.
know, Manson didn't actually kill anyone.
There is a potential case that the journalist Tom O'Neill goes into in the book in terms of in relation to a person missing in not too far from the Manson family den out in the desert.
Great name, by the way.
This young kid in a Volkswagen, he gets his car is found. He's dead. His hotel room or motel room is like a bunch of stuff stolen, and he so it puts Manson and his crew very in close proximity to the whole thing, and kind of like relates to what's happening later on, because there was also the murder that happened at Spawn Ranch too, where they had somebody kidnapped or tied up and everything like that, and that person eventually died too, if memory serves correct. If I'm getting those details wrong, don't kill me.
Well, CIA might, but
That's already happening every single day. So there is potential that he probably did do something, but he's more or less the mind control essentially work, MK Ultra work, because they're controlling Manson in the sense of giving him the tools to go out and do the bidding for the CIA.
Okay, so he's not consciously aware, like, I'm purposely putting these people together to go and create assaults and make the hippie movement look bad. He actually thinks I'm doing this because I want to do this, and he thinks he actually is the person that all of his followers saw him as.
right. So then the question is, does that mean being an MK Ultra experiment, it was successful in that case? Like, did they successfully convince him to do that?
Certainly.
Or was he actually just crazy and adding psychedelics to the mix probably just made it worse?
That's what I want to know, is like, did they just turn him loose? And,
Yeah,
this was the result of just turning him loose? Or
think
was
that's
that
the
whole
case.
thing kind of pushed and controlled? Or maybe it's both. Maybe they did let him go, but then they just kind of push things around him in
Yeah.
certain directions that eventually led to
because I think
murder?
I think that's well within reason because Manson was a drug dealer. I mean, it's pretty well known he was a drug dealer. He provided drugs to the Beach Boys, to Brian Wilson and whatnot, if that's the right Beach Boy. But also too, the friend of Sharon Tate, the hairstylist, Seidberg. That's his. I can't remember his name, but
he was in the Tarantino movie.
Yeah, he had,
little guy.
He had he had connections to the mob. So it couldn't have. I mean, there's also that theory that it wasn't even the Mansons themselves. The family that did it themselves. It was like a mob hit, and it made it look like it was the. So
I'm in that line.
That's a whole
You
thing.
think so?
That's a whole thing in terms of like what is the truth, because this whole helter skelter thing was complete BS made up by the Los Angeles attorneys to try and make it seem like Manson was this whole guy. It's just build up this whole narrative to make a landmark case for this young district attorney, and let alone the LA County law enforcement in general, to make them seem like heroes in this whole thing to get the bad guys. So I mean it's just muddled in a bunch of different ways you can go, and they just boiled it down to this is what it is, as opposed to there's probably more to it, in which Tom O'Neill actually goes and interviews the LA district attorney. He goes to great lengths to try and interview as many people, even Manson himself, but he's like, I never really got anywhere because that dude's brain was fried to begin with, so there's like nothing left for me to actually getting information. So it was it's
almost like the magic bullet theory for Manson.
Yeah,
like
essentially.
You trash his mind so that he's completely unreliable as any kind of a witness or anybody who could speak out against you. You create helter skelter kind of for him, and then that's the narrative that you're now pushing. So maybe things just went off the rails with Manson, and then it's just okay. Let's put all these pieces together, and then we can put this in a little box. Say all the hippies are bad, and then we can move on.
You can write off and keep moving on.
In that context, it really doesn't sound all that fantastical anymore. Now you don't have to have so many coincidences set up in place, like dominoes falling for Charles Manson to murder Sharon Tate. And
it's very Alan Dulles too,
right? Yeah, it's not like the butterfly flapping its wings in China anymore.
Right.
Now it's just I muddy the waters. I create a false flag. I blame it on my enemies, and now I can go about the original plan, the intention of the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And if you do that, it fits 9/11. It fits all of our false flag.
And it's not even
problems,
supposed to be the end of MK Ultra. It's just like, all right, this is a little side mission, like in the video game of like Take Over America. It's
exactly.
This is just a little. All right, we got to take care of this little hippie problem. Can I get some of your MK Ultra guys? And
which brings me to the next point, which I wanted to bring up, was Universe 25, which you kind of were talking to them a little bit about that.
I want to get to that one, but I just also want to clarify that we talk about the U.S. government false flags and everything. Let's also not forget that the Canadian government also funded MK Ultra research.
Yes.
Known, proven. And in fact, one of my favorite things is
Harley
paid
Pasternak was a Canadian military.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's even more interesting is the Canadian government, similar to the U.S. one, has admitted knowledge, exposed. They had knowledge and funding provided to the experiments. This was in 1984 that came out. There was lots of settlements from the Canadian government to families, to victims. So there's a guy named Dr. Cameron. Dr. Cameron was also doing some of these experiments. He died. His personal records were destroyed by his family for no reason.
Like
they just
his CIA family, or his,
Canada being involved at all is just like, what?
Like,
I believe it.
They successfully
we
figured
an
out
extra $100 to get the program going, and okay, Canada.
Look, they successfully figured out how to make a whole nation nice. I'm sorry. They're so pleasant now. Thank you, LSD.
They gave all the Canadians ecstasy.
Yeah, that's what it is. They just switched the drugs. They're like, no, save the better stuff for us. Give them the
It's
ecstasy.
wearing off on the truckers, though.
Yeah.
That's oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. So you wanted to go into University 25.
Universe 25.
Or sorry, Universe 25.
Yeah.
So the
Is that
biggest
like
thing
a
I know.
Marvel alternate universe?
I know, right? That's
Yeah.
what it seems
Where
like.
Iron Man's still alive.
So again,
People
I don't
still go to their movies.
I don't remember the name of the doctor doing this. I forgot.
I forgot as well.
But similar kind of thing, experimenting on. Yeah, we can figure this
Look it
out
up.
right now. Experimenting similar, but trying to do experiments on like rats.
So is this part of MK Ultra or some other?
No, this is my connection to it. This is something that I'm trying to like lead us down to like to talk about in the
Yeah.
sense of like where there was a massive amount of 2,200 mice, and then
It grew up to that point.
It grew up to that point, but then it all came down to just 122 remaining. There was ample food, shelter, everything like that, but they actually just started to become violent with each other. And
We should back up a little bit and explain what was happening to these mice because we're talking about them getting violent. Let's back up a little bit. So
Two
here
mice. We're in a bucket of cream.
it is. John Calhoun. So with his rodent utopia. So he was doing experiments on mice in the same sort of vein as like what MK Ultra would have been to humans.
Trying out drugs on them.
Exactly, trying it on mice. So
Just for the record, I'm okay with that.
In a
Right.
very
Like,
close
it's
proximity.
The human line is where I don't want to cross.
Well, no, that's the thing, though. So everybody's living in close proximity, so very much like major cities do.
Right.
Very much like Los Angeles, New York, Tokyo, Hong Kong, all these kinds of things, specifically Los Angeles. This is just my own personal connection in terms of like how I view this. Because living in downtown LA, I lived down in downtown LA for 5 years.
I'm sorry.
Amount of just
Homeless.
but also the feeling that you have when you're walking around and you're in such a confined space with that amount of people and you have to be on guard all the time and there's constant sirens, constant helicopters. There's never a quiet moment to where that is. Your mind kind of goes somewhere else. You're constantly just on edge and you're ready to defend yourself. You're ready to do all these kinds of things. So that relays from this experiment to Jolly West going to UCLA. So when he was there, he proposed that I want to create a center for violence. I want to study humans and violence. He wanted to build a facility in Granada Hills or in Mission Hills area, a full facility
Oh, there's no tough people there.
to basically do this type of experiment.
So basically, try to create a crowded environment, put a lot of people in it.
Recreate it, but with humans.
Yeah, so that's why I see your connection you're trying to make now. So basically, MK Ultra, same guy, moves on to UCLA, and now he's doing more social experiments, but instead of with drugs, he's doing it in these confined, well, probably still with drugs, but confined spaces. And he gets the inspiration from what I believe also is this Universe 25. So basically,
So what's the timeline on Universe 25 experiments?
68 to 73.
Okay, and then what's the timeline of Jolly West moving on from MK Ultra?
Let's see. That is a good question.
While you pull that up, I'll explain Universe 25 a little bit just because it's pretty wild. So started with just a handful of mice. They created a mice utopia, plenty of food, plenty of water, lots of apartments, but very close together living. And he basically didn't allow for any control in population. He just said, as much population as we can make, let's see what happens. It grows to 2,200 mice approximately. By that point, you then start seeing female mice leaving their young to die. They don't watch them. You find extra heightened aggression towards other mice, so they're killing each other, they're attacking each other, and for lack of a better term, I couldn't say it any better, they were turning the mice gay. So they were finding that there was an increase in homosexuality amongst the mice culture as the population
That's
increased.
happening to us.
So, right.
In this room right now. Looking good, Mike.
So, and then it basically spirals out of control. So then from 2,200, it goes down to only a few hundred, and there was no saving the population whatsoever. There was no way to bring it back. After the population had reached some sort of peak, we don't know what that peak was exactly, but basically overcrowding socially, just too close, killing each other, abandoning children, homosexuality, and then the population completely collapses and everybody dies. The whole mice population dies, and there's no way to save it.
All the mice die? 'Cause I thought they were down to like 220, and then just all of them die out.
They all died.
They all died.
Okay.
So density is a natural population limiter.
Not only is it a natural population limiter, it doesn't just bring
destroys the population.
Right. It doesn't just bring the population down
the last
to
122. They ended up dying.
Exactly. So the density doesn't just kill up to a point where it's now manageable. It just wipes the whole thing out. The population is so destroyed. It's
you guys are out of control. Let's just stop this whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it gets to this weird point where now instead of, I mean, you see it today, right? So you're in like, I mean, I don't know. Some people love city living in dense populations, but when I'm in an area with a ton of people, I lose my mind. I can't do it. Like really dense, like the thought of like going to New York shoulder to shoulder everywhere I go makes me like want to crawl into a hole and die. Just the thought of it. And that's just me personally, but I can't imagine that that's a healthy way to live long term for a person. And so same thing. So now you have Jolly West wanting to do that same experiment of like, hey, what happens when you pack people in super tight and, you know, make them shoulder to shoulder all day. And now you see in the most densely populated areas in the United States, people are overly aggressive, killing each other, children being left. Like it's the same kind of thing.
So, you know, but in those instances also you have to think, is that just poor economic situations also? Poor education.
Sure. But at the same time, you have like those poor. They're still. You know,
I agree that the overpopulation is a problem, but there's also there's so many other factors that are playing into it as well.
Absolutely. But you have to think like those mice had shelter, they had food, they had all those different things. They were poor quality. Yeah. Same thing could be said about these areas too. They're poor quality. They still have them. They have the bare minimum, so to speak.
They have enough to not die.
Yeah, they have enough to just barely survive and contribute and pay taxes and do whatever else that they're able to do. So I found
don't pay your taxes.
But this other place was a mouse utopia, right? Or like
utopia.
They had enough food.
Dystopia.
Dystopia for sure.
Yeah.
So he was a UCLA.
Every utopia is a dystopia.
Jolly West.
Jolly West was a UCLA psychiatric institute from 69 to 89. So
he's
the same
out
year that Manson.
Bookends of that time for the
hold on.
Universe 20.
The description of Jolly West after this is my favorite thing. He was an expert on cults, coercive persuasion, alcoholism, drug abuse, violence, and terrorism. He was an expert. He was.
He worked for the CIA.
So I just love the terrorism part because of the list of known, alleged experimentors in MK Ultra. There's Ted Kaczynski, who is like the most iconic American terrorist. I think one of the most iconic ones personally. But similar to your question earlier, Brad, about like, did Marilyn was the
Marilyn Manson?
Sorry, sorry. Yeah, he's a problem too.
That's back on the normal MK Ultra path.
Charles Manson, similar to like, was Charles Manson like a successful experiment? Right? Did he like?
That's what I'm saying. If it's 1969, he was serving from then. That's the same year.
Well,
what about Kaczynski though?
69 to 73 was the mouse experiment, though, right?
Right.
So maybe this is
68.
They're both kind of coming up with the same idea. One experiments on mice, the other one wants to experiment on people.
The one wants to experiment on humans. I mean, the Center of Violence stuff for Jolly West didn't go through. There was a lot of backlash from Los Angeles, and just the county in general was like, no, you're not going to do this. This is unacceptable. What are you, crazy, and everything like that. So he stopped there. But, you know, the only good thing about of him going there to UCLA is that, you know, he had several, you know, I can't remember how many boxes of documents that he had that were there that nobody knew about and that are free for anybody to go and look at and investigate.
I would also like to point out a fact that I didn't know until looking at this right now, which I think is wild. Third paragraph down, started with in 1959, but at the end, in Oklahoma City, he demonstrated his support for the civil rights movement by attending sit-ins and rallies. That's Jolly West.
Where's this?
In 1954, at only 29, he was appointed professor and chair of the Department of Psychiatric at the University. Psychiatry at University of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
The youngest professor in American medical school.
Yeah, smart guy.
Yeah. He's crazy.
I'm not that far off on that. I would ruin that job.
So these notes that are at UCLA, are they more about kind of where he was going? Like pushing more of this narrative of trying to get people in small areas?
I don't think it's more about more about MK Ultra. It's a lot of
Right.
information.
I'm just wondering if he was like,
Oh,
okay, I'm moving.
gotcha.
I'm moving on. And like the papers I'm taking with me are things that I want to use. Like,
Probably
going
most
forward.
likely.
The scale is like changing dramatically here because like MK Ultra, I think when people say that, I think they're actually thinking more like Jason Bourne, you know,
creating
yeah,
the
that's
Manchurian
what I'm
candidate.
Manchurian
Yeah,
candidate,
yeah.
right?
This is like small samples
Right.
you got to go to, which I'm getting there.
But if you go to a larger scale, I don't think we're in MK Ultra anymore because you're not breaking down the psyche and inserting your programmable
Yes,
intelligence in there. But on a larger scale, you would go before MK Ultra, you'd go to Tavistock. And Tavistock was like basically the propaganda machine. It started as like the Wellington House, I believe. They're behind a lot of the propaganda that got Britain, America into world wars. That they even continue to this day. I think just recently they were in the news because their gender affirmation clinic or whatever in Great Britain just got defunded because they had too many of their clients that were complaining that they never got good counseling, and they were basically regretting what had been done to them.
Right.
So yeah. So like Tavistock is definitely all over. Like,
So is this the large part, kind of what I was mentioning earlier about like track housing and all that? Like
that's kind of similar to that.
The image of America.
I think it's interesting to talk about that because I think that what we've seen in the last several years means that there's a failed experiments because it didn't naturally happen. San Francisco, beautiful place, 15 years ago. 12 years ago, right? But you need to have artificial influences like shipping homeless out there, like destroying the laws underpinning the social contract, and so that took from maybe 2009 to 2014 to really undo. And now when you go to San Francisco, now you're seeing just a hellscape.
You can download an app for making sure you don't find poop
but it wasn't
on the
natural.
street.
Though.
There's an app for that.
Poop police.
It wasn't natural.
Police, yeah.
Before,
Is that the
all
name?
for it was
No.
the poop app people.
Yeah.
it wasn't natural though. Before it was a very dense urban populace and the like center of the internet. So I mean, they did fantastic.
So going from there and what you're talking about, like on a bigger scale, that leads into more of the social engineering, but also going into DARPA LifeLog. If you guys are familiar with that at all.
Is that like pre-Facebook?
So
DARPA LifeLog. So. Wonder why that never caught on.
Yeah. I love a good acronym.
Oh, it is. It's pre-Facebook.
It came out the same year. So as soon as DARPA LifeLog was going to be released in 2004, but the same year, Facebook was created. So therefore, instead of like going remotely into people's lives and stuff, people are automatically giving up their information.
Sorry, these people are not in marketing.
Yeah, DARPA's a terrible.
Sign up for DARPA LifeLog.
So
you and all your friends.
So going from there, even
That's
more.
That's probably intentional.
So going from there, from DARPA LifeLog, more or less probably having to be Facebook, which makes sense to me at least.
Right.
Putting that out there. Going into social media being the new MK Ultra in the sense of programming people and brainwashing people in the sense of manipulating it in any way possible that could be done and sway the people to divide them even further than what they were before.
Social media seems to be very successful at that.
Right. I mean, we are more divided than we've ever been, and it only gets further, right?
Just like 6 years ago, Facebook had to admit that they were changing people's feeds to present happy news or sad news, and
the news to piss them off mostly,
or whatever it might be,
that's
just to manipulate
the most,
their
interaction.
Yeah,
just
to manipulate
people
that.
off.
Yeah. So that's my map, so to speak, of
that's
where
the grand design.
That's the grand design. That's the thing of just like of social engineering everybody. MK Ultra being the beginning of like how are we going to do it with drugs? I mean, because rudimentary way, but the more thing. I mean, it's scrolling far more addictive than anything.
Well, the problem with drugs is that they wear off.
Yeah, this
or they kill the person depending on the drug.
Yeah, so this is much easier, much better. But also
you have to plant the. It's almost like Inception. You're planting like the seed of an idea, and it grows on its own, and then you actually start feeding it, right?
Right. Well, I mean, we see that today, right? So we see more division, more hatred, more unhappiness.
I don't know if it's more. Like,
or
do you think it's just more acceptable?
I don't think it's more.
Like,
I think you're just more.
Perception
you're exposed to it.
Is more.
You're just exposed to it more.
Yeah, the perception is more.
Shitty things have always happened.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, like when Abraham Lincoln was getting elected, that was well, it's certainly a lot of people not on the same side, very divided nation at that time.
There's definitely...
He only got elected because the other two parties had screwed it up so bad that
Right.
a third party could get elected.
Look, there's definitely like low-hanging fruit in the populace that's just going to get manipulated by all these things, and they are rabid. That's the NPC culture that you're going to see out there. That they just like they support the current thing. They're just like the robotic emotional set, right? And so they just like they have rage on something that they agree with Starbucks and Goldman Sachs, and you know what I mean. Yet they still have rage against the machine. But they are the machine.
They're rage with the machine.
Yeah. So there's
Rage
there's
against
definitely
the machine for the machine.
I don't want to
Right.
discount. I don't want to discount. Those people exist,
Right.
And they're closer to all of us than we'd like, I'm sure. But I don't think in the majority. I don't think so. I just think that everybody is very, very preoccupied. We've all got debts. We've got jobs. We've got plans. We've got goals. We've got family. We've got problems.
By design.
And by design, a lot of it too, for sure.
But a lot of that was narrative pushed from when we were kids. It's starting to change a little bit now. But
Right.
like you go to preschool, then kindergarten, then you do your first through 12th grade, go to college, get a job, get married, have a house, have kids. Like that narrative's starting to change now. But that's still in my head of like that's what you're supposed to do
Right.
with all of that stuff.
Build up a bunch of debt, die.
Exactly.
Well,
yeah.
and the way that it happens is, you end up building a bunch of debt, you build up a bunch of obligations, this or that, and it takes a lot to manage it all. So you are really not going to watch the watchers,
Right.
And that's really the situation. Is that
And I wonder if the games changed. Do you think the games changed from like in the 50s and 60s? Like it was very aimed at like making America powerful, but I think since then it's just more like now we're making certain individuals and certain groups, powerful, but not necessarily America powerful.
To me, I feel like it's so. I guess it's just because that's the way I'm seeing it, that it's just blatant. I like if it was subtle, if I saw these things happen, and I'm like, I could say, oh wow, it's true. We can't live together, and they're pushing us into tighter and tighter confines. That's why smart cities are coming, and we're all just going to murder each other or whatever. But at the same time, I also saw them do the most blatant things in the last 3 or 4 years, right? And if it was something that was expected to happen, you wouldn't need to force it. And so when I see the force, I almost feel like, wow, they probably did just realize that they lost. They just realized that it's not going to happen for them. And it's just going to take, at some point, they're just going to rip the mask off and say, yes, we're your overlords. And, you all get back in your cages. It's just going to happen one day. And by then, hopefully, there's still enough of us around that we can overwhelm them. But it's just been obvious. I feel like I'll give a pass maybe 60 years ago. I might give a pass to the people of 60 years ago. But, maybe not even 60. Like, when was JFK murdered? That was
60 years ago.
60 years ago. So that's probably my
60 years ago
cutoff.
this November.
That's probably my cutoff.
That's what I mean.
right
So
there.
like around that time, it seemed to be more in the interest of a strong America, but I don't think that even matters anymore. It's more just
Strong corporations.
right corporations and other interest groups they're vying for power. They don't really care who's president, who's not president, what party's in charge. None of that even matters. It's just
Where's the money?
exactly. And then keeping people divided is really just keep them busy so we can keep running away.
There
with
is
the
a lot of
money.
Right.
that. Keep people busy.
Keep them all
kind of
divided
stuff.
and keep them all hated.
Create
I mean,
stories.
I'm
that-
going to say what I said last time. You know how you stop this whole thing, right? Just don't pay your taxes. Just stop paying your taxes. They can't fund it if we don't pay taxes.
Yeah, they can't arrest us all.
Or can
Well, you just kill us all.
So
How are they going to get paid though?
Well,
yeah. So I mean, if we're going into
start moving them Indians over.
mass brainwashing,
It's already happened.
yeah, we saw it in the
That's-
last 3 years. We
That's-
literally
that's-
saw it.
That's my
Yep.
point in terms of just
Yeah, they told us
dividing
mask on, mask off,
dividing
double mask,
everybody.
triple mask,
That's my whole
one vax,
thing.
2 vax, 3 vax, 4. I mean, we went through the gamut. I mean, by this time, if you're still under the spell, I don't think you're coming out.
So
Yep.
one last thing I want to end on. So with you saying that, I just wanted to say that the CIA had its way with the United States like it has its way with every other foreign country that it
Yes, it is.
infiltrates.
It's an operation very similar. Yeah. And I think that's really it reveals itself as the pattern. And I think
Yeah.
that's one thing that's interesting is that as the pattern continues to get played, it gets played sloppier and sloppier. And the later
people
patterns
notice, right?
are
Well, it's
easier
like,
to
it's
spot.
like the better
than
you get at the
earlier
game,
spot.
you're like,
Yeah,
I
right,
don't, I don't need to do that. Nobody's going to care. Nobody will even notice.
Oh,
If
I
a quarter
found-
of them notice, we'll just call them crazy, and everybody will go, "Yeah, they
Right.
are crazy."
I found his passport.
Say my
It
first
fell out of
rodeo,
the
right?
plane.
We'll be
Yeah.
fine.
That's a good one. I feel like next
All
we
right.
should
Yeah,
talk about
we should-
9/11.
We should do that. We should do that
Oh,
in
yeah.
September.
Oh.
God, are we going to wait that long?
Yeah, it's a couple months.
We'll release it in
How
September.
many weeks is that?
We'll
Couple.
release it in September.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just do it on Building 7. That's all you got to do it on.
Right. Tower 7.
But MK Ultra, I just wanted to also mention, like, there's some other really cool things. There's like Project Monarch. I mean, cool. That's terrible to say, but Project.
Anyways, they all died.
Project Monarch is
So
an interesting one. That's the sex kitten.
Oh, yeah,
so
I know what you're talking
and
about.
use those to like compromise people. I actually 5-6 years back, I was into this stuff a lot. So I had a trip to New York City, and I actually went to Jeffrey Epstein's mansion. I went
the
to.
hell?
Ghislaine
what?
Maxwell. I just took pictures outside of it. That's it. I was just looking to see
Just like Bill Clinton.
all
right?
these places. It was like I
just
called it
hung out.
my deep state photo hunt is what I called it. And I did find
You're definitely on a list.
yeah. Oh, for sure. I did find
Can I tilt this camera a little bit more?
yeah, I did find. Please put my home address on a Chiron, please. So I did find what was it? It was like a private exclusive gym that was frequented. It's some club frequented by the Olsen twins, but
Nice
also
white
Ghislaine
shirts.
Maxwell. And this was, in the heyday of the Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein stuff. And I went to go check it out. It's definitely nondescript. There's somebody at the front desk. There's no way to get in. You got to get buzzed in. But you can see in the opening lobby, there's a huge wall painting of just monarch butterflies, like all in like display on some like foliage or something like that. And then if you look further back down the hall, there's a rose. It's like a 3D art piece of like a Mickey Mouse silhouette made out of roses. So these are all very symbolic of the Operation Monarch and stuff like that, which I thought was pretty interesting. What does Mickey Mouse have any relationship with an exclusive club in the Upper East Side of Manhattan? But that Disney himself has a lot of connections to MK Ultra. A lot of times, that the formula of the movie is to traumatize the kid right off the bat with the mom dying or whatever, and then they're suggestible to programming.
Sure.
Yeah,
like in Pinocchio, right?
And pick
What?
pick
I don't-
any Disney
Yeah.
movie.
who died in Pinocchio? I don't remember, but
At least
He
the old
just-
school ones,
he
right?
just-
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all messed up. All
but
right.
yeah, so Disney has a huge role to play in a lot of this. I don't
Oh,
know
now
if
they're
you guys ever
Putting a lot
gotten
of
to
dicks
that.
in their animation too.
Yeah. In the covers.
All right. Well, I think
right.
we successfully.
Yeah, we successfully did the thing. I think we're good.
I think 9/11 is definitely on the
9/11
docket
Yeah,
on the
it's on the
queue.
list.
9/11, yeah. 9/11 and what else?
It's on as many lists as we're on.
As long as we're not talking about aliens, I'm good.
Oh, we're
We'll
gonna
get
talk
there.
about
Oh, for
aliens.
God's sakes.
We're gonna talk about
At some
aliens.
point or
We're gonna
another.
talk
They're
about
called
aliens.
UAPs, guys. Let's get it right.
UAPs. All right.
They're
All
called
right.
MacGuffins.
Well, remember, people, don't pay your taxes.
Yeah.
Like,
don't
comment, subscribe.
don't pay your taxes, but do your own research. Don't believe anything that we said. Look into it yourself, and that'll do it.
or enjoy the show.
And enjoy that too.